Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 New Year special episode of Hacker Talk. My name is Philip, and today we got a great episode ahead of us. I'm really happy with today's constellation of guests. We have a listener favorite with us today, as well as a new face on the show. With three hackers strong, we will make sure to go out with a blast. We will give you an overview of what has happened in 2024. What are some notable events? What are some trends we've seen? What pitfalls has it been along the way? We got an action-packed episode ahead of us today. Without further ado, let's get into it. With us today, we got a fan favorite, Johnny Christmas. How are you doing today, Johnny?
Hey guys, I didn't know I'm the fan favorite. I assumed it was Zagros, not the host. Hey, thank you for having me back. It's been a very long time. It's been
It has been. It
4
has
years.
been 4 years, yeah.
Too long for me. So thank you for having me back. Thank you, I guess, to the fans who emailed in and said they wanted to have me back. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. Everyone emailing. And if you want to email to the show, you can email podcast@firosolutions.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's also, if you're on Spotify, you can press the contact button. But Johnny, like for all new listeners out there, who are you? What's your background?
Whoa, what a question. What a question. I'm Johnny Christmas. I've been operating in the hacking scene since mid 1990s. I think I would say 1995. Honestly, was when I was posting on the bulletin boards back then. First discovering CDC bulletin board and going out from there. I have been. It was difficult to become well known back then because there was not that many users just communicating with each other and finding these little corners of, well, we can't really call it the internet yet, but I'd say I started to become more well known in the 2010s. I had been speaking at conferences since 2002, but again, just with the internet not being prolific enough, there wasn't a lot of intercommunication between all of these sparse communities that were out there, and everyone had their own IRC channels, and nobody really, one group from one country would never find a group from another country. But then once the internet became more ubiquitous and YouTube became a place where you could host long form videos for free and everyone kind of congregated there. And I started getting my talks online on YouTube, and people would find me through there. And then I'd say after the what I call Infosec's 9/11 in the U.S., which is when Target, the listeners may recall the Target breach. Target was a shopping chain here in the U.S. This was gargantuan, and I don't have to get into it. Suffice to say that it resulted in a lot of monetary loss for Target, and because of that, it caused companies worldwide to begin hiring in internal security staff. Most companies had nothing. It was common to have nothing. And because of that, more people started getting interested in this field and working in this field. And we started to see the conferences explode. You couldn't drive 300 kilometers without running into another conference. And I was touring the world, speaking at all of them on the work that I was doing. I think that's really where I started to become well known, is because I was just everywhere talking about cool stuff, cool hacks. I'm a hacktivist at heart, and so I think that's what helped as well. As I would talk about things like, I was in the news a bunch, maybe for the first time, when we leaked all of the TSA's master keys. Folks may remember that. I think this was 2013. 2014, something like that. The TSA had ignorantly leaked photographs of their own master keys here and there. And I did a lot of work on making them 3D printable. And then, being the charismatic and talkative chap that I am, I was out there a lot, talking about what we were doing and really trying to push the subject of, we're not doing this to be jerks, and we're not doing it just because we think it's funny. We're doing it because at the time there was a lot of talk, and I think we're going to get into a lot of this later. There's a lot of talk about should we be giving law enforcement officials backdoors to our encrypted communications. And what we were doing with the TSA keys leak was saying, like, hey, so like, let's assume that we can trust the government implicitly. Okay, let's let's all create this imaginary world where we trust the government to only do good things. Okay, so even in that case, what happens when bad guys steal those backdoor keys? What do you do then? Do you have a process in place to negate those and replace them like you should? Because we've seen plenty of times that the government has lost very, very, very sensitive things. From, there was an OPM breach where they lost all of the government employees' extremely sensitive personal data used for, top secret clearance interviews and things like that. And so we know we can't trust the government to not lose things. So do we have something in place to make sure that when they do lose things, that we can replace them? And so, of course, with the TSA keys, there was no process in place. And the government's response was, well, we don't really care so long as we can still get into your luggage. It's not a problem to us. But we thought that was a really great way to bring a physical, tangible thing that the public can touch and understand, to make them then understand what we're talking about with digital keys. You want to give them a digital key because that's nebulous. Most people go, that's technical. I don't understand computers. I don't know. Do whatever you think is best. But if I say, hey, it's like keys to your house, it's like keys to your luggage. They can lick your toothbrush now. Is that
jargon?
What's yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that's I think what really put me on the map, and then things skyrocketed from there. I did some stuff with stopping stalking on Venmo, which is like a cash app here we use in the U.S. Gosh, I don't know. I've done so many things, and I talked about so much stuff that I think really it was just, I became like the Paris Hilton of Infosec, where everybody knew who I was,
Chaos
but could not tell you what I do.
Yeah.
And so here I am. Right. He's a good looking. Yeah. So that's me. I hack and I go places.
Yeah, he's around, he's awesome, he's a rock star. The details are fuzzy. That's awesome. And with us today as well, we have a personal friend of mine, amazing hacker, also from Sweden, pen tester. We have Zagros Bingol. How are you doing today, Zagros?
I am good. Thank you very much, Philip. And I am it's grateful for being and I'm really happy to be on this podcast with both Johnny and you. I've been listening to Hacker Talk for a long time now, and been really looking forward to having further conversations. I started well, as Philip stated before, I knew him since around 10 years ago, maybe. We met on I think it was on Skype, if I'm correct.
Some way
Philip,
or
right?
another, yeah.
It was through mutual friends. I think we met each other. Yeah, some way or another. And after that, we've been keeping contact. I work as a pen tester at a defense company. Previously, I have experience in SOC. When I started out, I was around maybe 13 or 12 years old, and it all began with just a curiosity, as for many others in the InfoSec community, I presume. And when I actually went, I used, like normally, the first thing that sparked my interest was, it was my sister who got a computer, and I was thinking, all right, let me see how this works. And first it was Space Cadet, Pinball 3, all of these. After a while, I'm not sure what sparked it, but it was just basically, okay, what else is there? And so I checked up, and somehow in another way, I can't correctly remember, but I was searching in the end how to hack Facebook accounts. but after a while, I've been having that interest for a very long time since then, and I've been concurrently been hacking, been active in different communities, but also spoken physically with friends, colleagues, and when I am in conferences about InfoSec. And I'm a very lucky guy to be a part of the Infosec community, and the people are great there. And it's really great to also, and it's really great to meet Johnny also as well for the first time.
Hey.
What I've usually done previously, it's been, how can I say, it's been in different areas. I've been jumping a lot, but it's always been towards most offensive. My dream was to always do it professionally, work-wise. I was always dreaming, okay, someday I'm going to come into a place and I'm going to see 30 monitors with, with different hack attacks, and no lights in the office as well. And in the end, now when I'm there, I'm thinking like, okay, it's not the same thing. I'm just in the office with the lights on. I'm not seeing any monitors. I'm just seeing two, But
I never thought that it could ever be a job. It could ever be something that people do.
That was the thing.
It's crazy.
Previously, like many years ago, like security, it wasn't even on the table so much. But nowadays, it's like really important because during the times that me and Philip were active, and most likely when you started to begin, Johnny, and towards there, the security wasn't so much important. The executives and the other companies were just thinking, we're pretty secure. There is no issues, but
right. It was the IT team's responsibility in general, and really, it was okay. We patch things and make sure accounts have a password, and that's
yeah. It's correct. I'm agreeing with you. I am agreeing with you totally there. And the thing is, but after a while, when big hacks happened, that's when companies realized that, all right, well, I think we have to educate our security teams and not basically being blind for it. And it's great that it has come to a profession, actually. And it's also, so it's great for it to become a profession, and I'm very lucky to be in that profession.
I say that all the time. This is absolutely luck.
Yeah.
And I think we all need to acknowledge that. Like it's luck that this became such a large profession, and it's not that large. It's still very tiny compared to IT. It just everything else. It's still very tiny. But the fact that we're able to do this is absolute luck, and it has to do with those fantastic people who first hacked Target. With should we make them martyrs? I don't know. I have two friends who were penetration testers in the 1990s, and I don't understand. What are you talking about?
It must be a pain in the ass to get gigs then. Now it's
absolutely.
Yes, but in the 90s you have to sell yourself in, and then what is a pen tester and how does it work?
Yeah, it's
constant amount of pitching.
Yeah, if you were trying to do a private firm, forget it. You would never get off the ground. Yeah.
And now it's just so many boutique, smaller pen testing firms that are doing great stuff, and we often see people get in trouble, maybe go into prison for a while, and then they come out, and then they start boutique.
Right, that's the
firms, and
that was what you had to do now. That was like going to university for a hacker. You go to prison, and then you say, okay, I did my prison, so now I can come be a professional hacker, and you should pay me a lot more because I was in prison.
Yeah, that's branding back then. Yeah, 101.
Right. Oh, Kevin Mitnick style. Kevin Mitnick started that theme. Not that he was trying. Rest in peace, Kevin Mitnick.
Rest in peace.
Unfortunately, it's actually pretty not funny, but we actually had him scheduled for Hacker Talk, but it kept getting in between the shares, and then his secretary, he was at some conference, and he was gonna do an interview with us here on the show, but he was at a conference, and then life got in between, and then I think I got an email, or someone got an email from his secretary that he passed away. So it's very sad.
Yeah.
It was really sad, actually, when we heard about it. When I heard about it.
That's the worst situation when how many I'm sure we've all lost people, and then when it happens, and you think back and
Yeah.
you go, "Wow, I wish I had spent more time with them." And life just keeps getting in the way, and sometimes you gotta put life aside and decide what life is. And yeah, there's never enough time though. You'll never put enough life
There
aside to
isn't.
spend enough time with all the great people.
No, unfortunately not. And what's weird is that this has happened twice now when a guest has been postponed and unfortunately died. The previous one was a famous phone freak,
Was it
Cheshire
Cheshire Catalyst?
Catalyst.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had him on almost had him on the show because both me and Cheshire, we love Freak Brothers,
Uh-huh.
which is this like old comic book from the 60s. So so we
He
like
was
bonded over that, but
he was such a nice guy.
best
Cheshire.
guy ever.
Such just unwavering kindness from him. Always smiling. Always smiling. Appropriate name for someone constantly smiling. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the best thing, and I mean, when you have somebody around that spreads positivity, always it makes you feel good, and you always remember them.
Yeah.
So in the end, it also leaves a legacy somehow.
Absolutely. That's how I found out who he was. I didn't know who he was for maybe 4 years or so. And I used to go to the Hope conference, the 2600 conference, which he was at all the time. And he was just this great guy I would see and have really great conversations with all the time. And he would just go by Cheshire. And it's, oh, cool. It's Cheshire's here. We'd sit down and have great conversations. And then it was maybe 4 years in that I had gotten some information, put two and two together, and realized who he was. Extremely famous godfather of modern hacking scene. And I was like, oh, and he would never have known it. He never referenced it. He never owned it.
No, such a humble person.
Absolutely.
Amazing humble person.
And happy to sit down and just have a talk with anybody who wanted to talk with him. My favorite story of him is 1 year he had made his own soap, little bars of soap.
Okay.
And he had brought them to the conference, and he was just handing them out and saying, perhaps you need this, or perhaps a friend who might need this here at the conference. please do the community a favor and share this with them.
Yeah, but it's such a. But I mean, having somebody having such a big heart that they just thinking, okay, let me make some soap, even whatever else it can be, and let me share it around. It's a really big
and it was a
thing,
funny little joke. It was also very nice soap. And I still have it. I won't bother to go dig it out, but I still kept that bar of soap that he made just because it was a cool little. Yeah. It's in my closet of tchotchkes,
So we had a pretty eventful year. I haven't been paying attention so much to the news. I've mostly been working and in my zone the entire year, but a lot of things have happened, such as the CrowdStrike phenomenon, which was basically CrowdStrike giant blue team company basically released a bad Microsoft update. 8.5 million Windows hosts went down over day. And they were down for.
I can't even.
That was like the
that
was like the new target breach. Like when my parents, when my friends who don't work in tech knew about this, when the world knew this was happening. Yeah.
But it was unbelievable when it came up. Like everywhere was affected. And the funny thing is that, I mean, they somehow CrowdStrike snitched on themselves somehow also by every company that had issues also posted that they have issues. So threat actors actually know which companies run which EDR.
Yep. Yeah.
So it was pretty.
They put it right on the front of their webpage due to the CrowdStrike outage, and it was because they wanted to, pass the blame and go, look, this isn't our fault. This is CrowdStrike's fault. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's kind of your fault because you don't have, a disaster recovery process. You don't have business continuity in place. But no, let's go ahead and blame CrowdStrike. That's easy. I mean, to be fair, we had at my company, we have oscilloscopes go down. Like we had the strangest. We had devices that we did not know was running Windows,
and they just stopped working.
Yeah, it was absolute chaos, the craziest thing. And it stemmed from, you want to play the who do we blame game. It was a little bit of everybody's fault, including Microsoft. All the other operating systems have long since stopped allowing third parties to use kernel modules and to do ring zero
risky
stuff.
business.
And Microsoft, and there's a much bigger story to this that I don't think we have the time to get into, but Microsoft kept allowing it, and here we are. This is what happens, if you're going to allow operating system, ring zero level access to things. When that ring zero fails, that's it. And when you give a third party the ability to do that, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Not so optimal.
Not so optimal as we saw. And, a lot of apologizing and things. And at least they owned it. You saw the CEO coming out and speaking. He was at Defcon, right? And he came out and he said, hi, everyone. We fucked up. And he was very, very much saying it was our fault. He wasn't trying to say, also other people have made mistakes too, and we should all take part. No, he came out. He said this was our fault. And
that's completely right. If something like that happens, you just own up to it, I think, and
absolutely
try to move on.
Anybody who works in tech knows that. The right answer is, if you broke something, you raise your hand and you go, I broke that. Here's how I broke that. I'm happy to help fix it. Otherwise,
it is really great because I mean, when somebody takes the responsibility, like a company takes responsibility, in this case, CrowdStrike, they're really big in Infosec. And the thing is, when the CEO, I think it was, as you say, when somebody comes up and says, it was our fault, people get respect for that. If they say it wasn't our fault or it was this or that, as you stated, Johnny, it would be like, shall I work with a company or shall I respect a company that doesn't take?
It's just a bad look.
Responsibility.
It's the same. Do you want to work with? Would you hire a developer that acted like that? No. Why would you hire a company that acts like that? And oh gosh, I forgot what I was going to say about that. Anyway, he did this in the face of the fact that it is. For a lot of companies, it is a massive, massive undertaking, often a multi-year undertaking to migrate to a different EDR. Even for just a large business, not even a Fortune whatever, it can take years. And so nobody's anybody who's going to migrate away from CrowdStrike because of this, for the most part, it's not going to be massively impactful to CrowdStrike's bottom line, dollar-wise.
No, and they're probably all stuck in long-term contracts with them, last 5 years or
and so something
like that.
And so to have the CEO come out in the face of all that, knowing that hey, nobody's going to leave because of this, and to still say we're sorry, this was our fault. Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't have to testify to Congress here. We love to do that. We love to make these poor people come talk to Congress. Was no idea what to people who went to law school,
senators,
talk about technology. There's no end of embarrassing YouTube videos of that.
I've seen a few, and I'm dying of laugh. I think one was it Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah, Zuckerberg, absolutely.
I can't remember.
That's one of the funniest ones because he's not a social guy, which is why he created Facebook, and it's very funny that he's not a social guy. He's a very socially awkward person, and it was very clear that he had gone through social training through whether it was internal or external people who do this sort of training, to be able to look more natural and act more natural. And you can tell he is just counting in his head and going, okay, 1, 2, 3, 15, take a sip of water. Okay, put the cup down. Okay, blink, don't blink too long. Count to 5, blink again. And so everybody accused him of being an android because he's doing all these things that he had just been with a week prior had been trained to do. And it was the absolute worst. And then he's getting grilled by these senators and these congressmen who who don't understand the subject matter, and maybe I'm not sure if they should be expected to, but that's all to say that there's no point in the conversation. You know, when you get the people who are being grilled just saying the same answers over and over that are very clear and concise, but these congressmen don't understand the answer. Why are we doing this? And so I was pleased to see that we didn't have to make the CrowdStrike CEO do this, because it's just embarrassing for my country is what it is.
Yeah, but it was just so funny sometimes when I heard the Congress, I think it's called the congressmen, the lawyers, it was sitting there saying their questions, and they were saying such questions that it was like really hard for somebody standing in front of Congress, somebody that's real technical, like maybe Mark or somebody else. Like the questions I heard, I was like, that's a really bit hard to understand. Like, is it tracking me? Is it, if I do this, does it track
God,
me?
the TikTok
And it
hearings
just
and
keeps on and they
yeah,
state questions,
yeah,
you're
and then they'll
like,
go to the
what?
next
Yeah.
representative, and then he asks the same question. Like, answer the question, and then the answer is often, well, it depends. There's a lot of contextual situations that, and they will only accept a yes or no answer, and so they keep pushing. Like, answer the question: is it tracking me? Well, sometimes. No. Yes or no. I don't know why we're doing this. I don't know why we're doing this. It's very clear they've already have their mind made up about what laws they want to pass, and now they're just making, I don't know, reality TV for people.
Yeah.
What did we go through? What countries are you all in? We should let the listeners know. Maybe they already know.
No. So we got a nice panel for us today. Very geographically diverse, I would say. We're all in different countries. Myself being in the capital of Serbia, South Central Europe, you could say. Zagros, where are you at currently?
I am in Sweden, at the south of Sweden, in a little town called Växjö. The weather, we're waiting for the winter. It hasn't come yet, but I'm not sure how it is in Serbia or in the US, or if it has come, but yeah, at least we're waiting for it. It's a bit different down here.
Johnny, where are you located?
I'm currently in Chicago, in the U.S., third largest city in the U.S., right in the middle of the North. And even though we're in the middle of the North, we are also still waiting for winter here. Had a lot of rain yesterday, and it was particularly warm. So it's been like that most winters, though, lately. So maybe we'll go another year without a winter. But yeah, this is a good group. I'm in the country where most people couldn't find Serbia or Sweden on a map. So thanks for having me anyway.
Yeah.
But it's also a sign, it's a funny sign when we think about global warming, somehow. I'm not sure, I'm not so much into it, but it's the first thought that comes into mind. Because when we were little, it was like when it comes to Christmas, it was snow everywhere. Yeah, but
Snow
now
everywhere,
it's
yeah.
not. It like in December it's not snow, then you have to wait a few months in January, February or something,
Yeah.
and then the snow comes. and then you realize
something is strange. But you really got to look at the historical data, because we'll get, depending on the region, we'll get 20 years of warm and then 20 years of cold, and it goes up and down. But that climate change, that global warming, it's where, even in those 20-year segments, are we trending towards slightly higher temperatures? And it's crazy. It's crazy what 1-2 degrees can do to affect the entire planet. It's absolutely nuts, because to us, to humans, you go, we can't feel the difference of 1-2 degrees, whether you're Celsius or Fahrenheit, we can't feel this. But then you see we've got plants are blooming at the wrong time, and the bees aren't awake yet, and so then we have pollination problems, and it's over 1 degree. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's an entire snowball effect without the snow.
Yeah.
True.
But that's a whole different podcast.
It is.
It's way off topic.
It is.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think of the year that has passed? Do you guys see any changes in the space, in Infosec, in hacking, in development of tools. In what is different this year from last year?
I would say, for me, I have noticed that AI has been very focused when it. has been very trending to implement in in offensive security. I have noticed at least some tools that.
Look,
Yeah, I mean the thing.
you've noticed this this little background noise.
No, because I've seen like plugins in Verbsuit and plugins and also in the independent tools, but I tried it out and I was like,
Oh,
yeah, I'm not sure this is at least I'm not sure it's the time for it, you know.
yeah.
But one I saw
I-
it was a company that developed how can I say offensive AI agent, I would say. Basically, you give it a prompt or some code or something similar, and then you just tell the AI basically, if we make it simple, could you find a maybe arbitrary authentication bypass maybe or something similar, and the AI was like basically analyzing the code. It's static code analyzes, then created requests based off it, and then also explained it.
mhm.
To the prompter, and it was actually fascinating that it has progressed. It has progressed so much. But I don't know. Let's see at least what happens further on in the future. But I think AI is in the future at least. I mean, maybe not now. I'm not sure, but at least it's
Yeah.
showing signs that it will maybe be heavily implemented into offensive security, and I think it also is implemented in defensive. As when I worked in SOC previously, it was basically AI on every on every sales meeting or every product meeting. Yeah, we have AI that will detect this, AI that will detect this, but it was just basically most likely false positives all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But during the times that will come, I think it will be more efficient. I mean, what's your opinion, Johnny? What do you think about it?
I'm really excited. And to be fair, so I was excited for 2024 to see what AI was going to do. And I knew that we were talking infancy. I mean, AI is not new, right? This is something that has been, as far as I've been following it, has been, being worked on for 10 to 12 years. And, we used to joke about it. I think anybody especially if you worked on the defensive side of the house, in the 2010s, the AI was the joke. Anytime you saw AI or machine learning on a sales, any kind of product information, you knew it was a joke. You knew it was garbage because it didn't. It was what they were doing back then because it took so much system resources to train any kind of model. They were doing it. Like, to be fair, this wasn't fake. It just wasn't great because they were taking all the customers' data and they were training a machine learning model on all the customers' data, and then all customers got the same model. And so the end result was you're still just detecting stuff from you're still just detecting background noise. You're detecting all the stuff that how can I put this? You don't really have a higher success rate over signatures, right? Because you've averaged everything to be mundane. Yeah. Whereas now when I saw it's crazy to think like when AI hit the mainstream, which was end of 22. Or I'm sorry, end of 23. It was, I think, like August is when like ChatGPT really like said, "Hey, everybody, come use this," and we're like, "Oh, this is kind of weird and crazy." And
2 years
let's
ago,
see how this gets integrated. I can absolutely see how this can be super useful because it's like having what we call the grunt workers, the juniors, the interns. It's like having free interns where you go, geez, I have this garbage, boring work that is not worth my salary to do. I'll give it to the intern to do. Hey, sort through all of this and catalog it in this way and that way and find me this or that. And like now I can have ChatGPT do it. And then I knew like through 2024, we started seeing it get integrated into everything. Like everyone is sick of seeing the word co-pilot, right?
Yeah.
uh,
Copilot,
yeah.
co-companion,
And because,
whatever.
and we were real sick of it because everybody started using it and we're like, this is kind of garbage. This is not great. I could have written something better myself. This is, yeah, whatever. But then towards the end of 2024, we really started like seeing it become very useful to the extent where now, like when starting new, especially new code or scripting projects, I absolutely go, hey, using this API version, write me something that does this, 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 and this, and this. And then great. It basically builds you a template, builds you a framework. And then I can go through and start massaging it into what is going to be most functional for my situation. And it's been really cool to see it get to that point. And get, say, I can now give it file uploads and like give it a spreadsheet and have it understand the spreadsheet and spit me back a CSV file. That's been really cool. But on the defensive side and even the offensive side, like I'm not seeing this like game changing situation yet. And I am positive that's coming. And I think that's what 2025 is going to be, because like it's there. It's so obvious, right? It's so obvious that what we can use AI for. In fact, even in the realm of detecting false positives. The problem, I think, is that we're not doing anything locally. We're not training models based on our own internal data for our companies. And so we're still getting that like general average crap. Like whenever I hit an AI function in anything, when you want to call it burp or whatever, and I don't see my GPU spike, I go, well, what the hell's going on here? Well, we know what's going on here. It's just sending something to the cloud and it's being processed in the cloud and we're getting a response. There's two problems there. One, did I want that sent to the cloud? Two, that cloud, like whatever model's up there, it's not trained on what I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to start seeing, in fact, we are seeing this already, like locally trained models based on context. I will say at my company, we have a massive push for this. We have an entire team dedicated to, we have an AI team at work. And if you need a model, an application to do this or that, you start working with the AI team and they will work on getting the data in and training a model and then building an application around that model for very specific contexts. And it's great. It doesn't, if you're doing like micro contexts, it doesn't take that long to train a model. If you don't have the entire internet's worth of data that you need to train it on, which you almost do, you never do, you're way better off training it and hosting it internally. Or, internally, be that in the cloud or whatever. But I think that's what 2025 is going to be, is we're going to start seeing you're going to start seeing model training as a service at a more consumable level, I would say, for the muggles, I call them, the SMBs, small and medium businesses, to be able to not just leverage AI, but to train models that are their models and then leverage AI. I think that's going to be a big thing we're seeing. And through that, I think we're going to finally also start seeing, locally trained models based on your network data and your user. What's the biggest thing we've been trying to do on the defensive side of the house? It's user activity fingerprinting, right? It's figuring out what is and is not normal activity for this user, for this machine, or especially for a user that bounces around to multiple machines. And so being able to dump that into AI and have AI instantaneously go, that's totally normal. Or this user never does this, because we used to do it. We had the data lake problem, right? Wherever we hit that problem of like, okay, now we have storage is cheap. We can store everything forever. Every last packet, I got it. It's in my data center. And then you go, okay, well, now what are you going to do with it? Well, organizing it is difficult. You got to really figure out what data is important, what data is not. And then you got to build databases. And then you got to talk about which of the 600 database frameworks are the fastest for this type of data and this type of access. And now it's a massive mess. It's you talk to any DBA and they'll you got to be a PhD to be a DBA. Yeah, and but then I think AI is solving a lot of that too, because you're just training a model. It's effectively a human being that can remember
Yeah, yeah.
everything instantaneously. And
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up this point because I had an interesting conversation with there's a guy called Harry Halpin, which founded a Mixnet company called NymVPN, and I think he or someone else, they sent me some law enforcement investigations, and right now Amazon has several products where they will basically take a data
Mm.
dump and they will do like a big diagram of like he is talking to his guy and he's using slang to say this and this and this, and AI being like a used
yeah, I mean, if you're
for
talking
basically mass
consuming
surveillance,
public
which
data,
is getting
Yeah.
scarier as well because what
I
yeah
mean, I will guarantee the NSA here is doing that. I'll
Yes.
guarantee the Five Eyes countries are doing this. That would be preposterous. It would if they're
missing
not.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like AI. I think we're past the conversation of should we or should we not be using AI. You know, it was kind of scary at first, and a lot of companies, which is the right response. A lot of companies just
Yeah.
out of the gate said, no, don't touch it. It's not allowed in here. We don't want anything to do with it. And that's the right response when you don't understand something. But it should be we're not allowed to use it here until
hmm
we understand it and we have a proper policy and a proper understanding around it. And so I think that's the way we should be going. I'm sure there are plenty of companies out there that are stonewalling this and saying, no, we're not doing anything with AI. It's not allowed in here. And that's like being given a universal tool that can fix most anything and then saying, no, it's new and weird and I don't like it. Everybody should be using AI. It's just
Yeah.
there's safe, responsible, proper use, and you have to understand it to be able to understand what is safe and proper and responsible.
Yeah, and be critical to it as well. I mean, a lot of cases just like
Oh yeah,
gobbledygook is just like hallucinating out the response, and then people are like, "Oh, I fixed an error, but the error message is like migrated, but the real error isn't really migrated," and people just blindly trust it. I've seen that a lot during the year.
Jeez.
People just
Yeah.
PR stuff that ChatGPT has
And that's not a good
Yeah.
idea.
goosed together.
That's yeah. I run a fairly large local information security organization out here called BurbSec. And we just last year started our Dublin meetup in Dublin, Ireland. So we're international now. But yeah, that was crazy. And then we got so we used to be Chicago only, and then now we have Dublin and Las Vegas, and I think soon to be St. Louis. But anyway, that's all to say. I talk to a lot of people who are. It's all hands on the keyboard people. I like to say it's all people who are doing the work, and we have a Discord with 1,000 members, and so. You get a lot of insight into what's going on inside various companies. And it's crazy the number of places I've seen where they are folding AI into their CI/CD pipelines and just like it's automated. It's doing, what are they calling it now? Not human, that thing. Yeah, we're inventing new terms, which is cool. But they're just putting it directly in the CI/CD and just having it just be a part of it and saying like, all right, then it runs it through the AI, and then the AI identifies any issues of this type or that type, and then automatically corrects them, and then builds, and then there's never a human. Oh yeah, that's what they're calling human in the loop. They're trying to call it, and I'm like, don't stop calling it human in the loop because it's not a human. It's very, it can't, they say, oh, it can reason like a human and it kind of thinks like a human. Like, no, it can kind of mimic human speech is the extent of it. You should absolutely still have a human doing code review, which is not a perfect solution either. Like, I understand why you're trying to get AI to do this instead of humans, because how many of us, you just go through your own code bases, go through your own, like all of your repos and search for the phrase like LGTM or looks good to me. And give me a count. How many thousands of times? Because some percentage of those, some significant percentage of those, the person just like skimmed down the screen and was like, yeah, it does this, does it? Okay, yeah, that seems fine. Okay, fine. Looks good to me. And then, you know, plenty of other times they didn't even look at it. They were like, oh, it was just a minor change. Whatever. I'm busy. It's fine. Looks good to me. So is the AI in the loop better or worse than the human who is not really looking at it at all? I don't know. I think the combination of both is better than just having one or the other. But absolutely, it's a strange thing to say. Hey, you should have code review, you know, and then of course QA. But like you should have a human being looking at the code and it's just the changes. You know, nobody is submitting a 3,000 line PR, right?
Sometimes. On big rewrites, maybe. Yeah.
I think that's indicative of larger problems. If it's a major rewrite, maybe that should be its own repo.
Something also, speaking of like PRs that have been less good, was like this year we also saw a backdoor in Tar, T-A-R, which is like this compression utility for Linux. I don't know if you guys...
Yeah, like one of the oldest. I mean, that's from the Unix.
Yeah. What I understand of it, I went and looked at the PR, and it was basically... So what happened is that someone took over someone's GitHub account. They pushed in basically x86 assembly changes. And then there was like two people maintaining it. And one of this was pushing in the x86 assembly. And the other guy that was reviewing it, he didn't know x86 assembly. So he was just like, oh, I'm sure this is great. And then that got merged, official release. It got into the Debian official repository. And then someone found it like a few days after it was put into production. But
and then what did we learn from this? That for how many code bases could you just start lobbing a bunch of x86 assembly into, and everyone will go, okay. That's
and as you said, and as you said, Philip, like basically after a few days, imagine how many users are using Tor and also installing it during those few days. So it's a huge impact.
And then how often does that person's system, that setup, go back to check for updates? Maybe weekly is the standard usually, right? So now you got a full week. And this poor person doesn't know because they're not keeping an eye on security news. And even if they saw that come up, they would be like, oh, this is over my head. I don't know any of this. Do they even know that they're using that package inside of whatever they're building? Because I believe it was a Node package, wasn't it?
No. It was also a Node package, but this is a C++.
No, that's something else I'm thinking of. There was also...
What was really worse with this is like connected to a syscall. That's like
two separate ones, right?
All other programs that want to use light compression. Yeah.
Everything uses tar. It's the other side of that though is like I used at my previous company, Grim, which is where I think I was at last time we talked. We did one of the things we did on the side when we were low on projects was we would look for vulnerabilities in the Linux kernel. And it was like, if you're familiar with the TV show Arrested Development, I don't know how far outside of the US that got.
It's gone all the way here. Also.
You're nodding your head, so you know the phrase, there's always money in the banana stand. Our phrase was, there's always vulns in the Linux kernel. And because we would find things that were from code that was 5 years old.
I met like so many developers during the year that do like low-level C++, and they all describe the Linux kernel as like a giant graveyard where like certain people have like responsibility of this, but no one really understand exactly what's going on. Probably Linus Torvalds and high-ranking people like oversee everything and put it together, but it's just like such a giant code base, so things get forgotten.
Yeah, and very, very few people are looking at it from both sides. So even, when we're looking at it, we find, we're finding RCEs, right? So we find that RCE and we submit the PR. And what's crazy about like the Linux kernel specifically is you have to communicate through the mailing list.
Yeah.
Like it's still like the 1980s,
Yeah.
and nobody responds. Nobody looks at this PR, and then it just sits there. And we're telling them like, hey, we're giving you 90 days, and then we're going to release POC code for this RCE. And this is the kernel, this is like the base kernel. This is the stuff that, other companies
It's
base.
the heart of the internet.
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. It
Yeah.
is the heart of the internet. And we're saying like, all right, we got 60 days, guys. All right. You have 45 days, guys, or 30 days, 15 days, and just no response from anybody. And no comments on the PR, nothing. And then like 4 days out, somebody commits it. And you just got to wonder, like, did anyone review this? Or did they get scared because of the POC and they just committed it?
Like you would imagine, like a lot of people look at it because like the Linux Foundation right now is like $1 billion non-profit, almost.
Yeah, I would hope so. I would imagine like if you're committing, it wasn't a huge amount of code. So I imagine somebody looked at what we put in there, but it was kind of crazy to, we would do the Scrum updates and they would just be like, yeah, no response yet. Are you, what? And a few days out, like last minute, they're like, oh, somebody committed it. Okay. Good, I guess.
That's crazy.
So it was, there's still a lot of that ancient, it's like a graveyard, even in that there's code from years and years and years ago that, like you said, there's, certain people just wrote it and nobody really understands it. And it sits there and like, maybe that person also, maybe they died, or they don't feel like doing it anymore and they haven't looked at it in 5 years. You can't expect them to keep maintaining it. But when you're a $1 billion organization, you should have more active research going on.
Yeah.
And maybe they do. I don't know what goes on inside there. I just know that there's always vulns in the Linux kernel. And that's not to pick on Linux. There's vulns in every kernel, right? It's just the Linux kernel is the easiest kernel to go find them in because it's all the code is right there. That's the purpose.
Yeah.
The downside is, there's good guys and there's bad guys, and how many bad guys are looking at the Linux kernel and not reporting the vulnerabilities they find,
or reselling them, or using them for bad stuff.
Right.
And
right. That's what they're doing, and so that's the downside to open source. That's you don't hear that conversation a lot. Of, hey, you should be aware of this, and I think we need to make people more aware. You say, hey, using open source products, that means bad guys can also see the code, and there may be exploits out there that nobody's aware of. So just make sure you have defense in depth around, the utilization of these products. Everything's good and bad.
And I can imagine the zero-day broker company, what type of exploits they have and are selling.
It depends. Like, you want to talk a Linux kernel RCE in a chunk of code that is found in most of the custom Linux kernels out there, because it's got to be something that targets Red Hat, something that targets Ubuntu, right?
Yeah.
Debian. So you want to make sure it's like, hey, this code, nobody is pulling this code out when they're compiling their enterprise kernels. You could get a few $1,000,000 for that. 1 to 2, I would imagine, just basing it off of like what I see. Like I see iOS, like Apple iOS drive-by exploits going for like 3 to 5 million from the brokers, and that's that's a gargantuan user base there, and that's that's a drive-by. The user goes to a website and then their phone is breached. Like that level of exploit almost never ever occurs.
Yeah,
almost
right.
No,
and so if you have that, that's you can get $5 million for that. And then you go, who's buying that? And who's buying that is not always what we would call the classic bad guy. Who's got $5 million? Maybe, a non-nation state APT here or there might have built up that much, but really it's going to be your nation states and your law enforcement. Yeah. And I roll law enforcement agencies of those nation states, such as nation state attacks, and so, or like companies like Celebrite. You know, if you have an iOS exploit that they can use to pull out the user's decryption key. Oh yeah, Celebrite might give you $5 million for that. Celebrite absolutely has that money. There's, you know, legitimate corporations who may be buying these exploits, and they have a very vested interest, vested to the extent of $5 million, to make sure that does not get patched. So don't assume that open source means that everybody has reviewed the code and it's clean and looks great. Hopefully somebody's throwing some AI at the Linux kernel. I mean, honestly, you're talking about one of our notes here. If we want to load into that, you're talking about OSS fuzzing, the OSS fuzzer using AI.
Yes. OSS Fuzz, yeah, it's an awesome project by Google that's been running for a few years. I know it because OSS Fuzz have been instrumental and they've been very good at helping the curl project, and Daniel behind the curl project, finding a lot of bugs in libcurl and also in the main curl repo as well. But they've been OSS Fuzz is basically this giant cluster of computers that are fuzzing.
Yeah.
Fuzzing PRs for pull requests for, I think, 1,200 open source projects or something like that.
And that's how you used to have to do it. The only way to fuzz was you just get a bunch of processors together, and you just it's brute forcing is what it is. And it used to just take just immense amount of processing power and time and time and time. Anyone who's done fuzzing,
shooting at it,
knows. Hey, you know, most of your time on the keyboard is spent trying to figure out how to narrow down the space that you're fuzzing.
Yeah.
Because you will exceed the heat death of the universe if you just open your fuzzer and hit go.
It's a bit like, I feel like it's a bit like password cracking, because like with fuzzing, you have like, you're writing a target file and you're saying like, I think XYZ function might have something bad in it, or it might cause some kind of exploit. And then with passwords, you think like, okay, I might have this like combination, and maybe the router uses like a number sequence, and it's X amount of. So you're kind of writing the same target files, and then hit it with John the Ripper, and then your GPUs cries for a bit, and
except with password files. With password brute forcing, there's only one function, and you know what input the function expects, and you know what the output will be, and it's a relatively fast compared to fuzzing, as far as how that like the execution of that function, the time is effectively up to how long it takes to calculate a hash, and that depends on what kind of hash you're calculating. Whereas fuzzing, it's like a million passwords all at once. You're just feeding all sorts of stuff into this function.
Everything you want to
even
try.
invalid inputs, and seeing what happens. In fact, you want invalid inputs. It's kind of the opposite. So it's the absolutely great use of AI. AI is almost like a 4-dimensional fuzzer. It's a great bridge until we get to quantum computing, I think.
Yeah.
If that ever happens, people keep getting more and more scared of quantum computing. And in fact, I work for I'm not allowed to say where I work, and that's not to say that it's super secret. It's just it's an internal crap. It's not hard to find out where I work.
NDAs and
So, but we
quantum computing.
Oh, yeah, quantum computing. Yeah. So we have legitimately started having real talks with vendors about quantum resilience internally, and doing testing for quantum resilience. And I still think that's crazy. And also, but then the other side of me tries to tell myself that, like, look, that's just a lack of experience on my part. This is a massive, massive, massive organization, and it may really take them that long to remediate, to be ready for when quantum attacks are viable. So I got to kind of shut myself up. But the reality is when we talk about quantum computing and it's coming, and we say, oh, we have quantum computers. This company or that company has created a quantum computer. Well, you look at the quantum computers they've made. They don't do anything. They're like, oh, it's a 1-bit quantum computer. And in fact, actually, I was looking at there's famously a woman, a female researcher whose name I'm of course blanking on, but she had created a quantum computer in her home. She actually had one running, and she's like, cool. Here, now the problem is there's no software that runs on this. We need an operating system. We need code. And even then she's like, this thing, it's 1 bit. It doesn't do anything. You're gonna write me a 1-bit operating system? No, it's 1 quantum bit, which gets a little fuzzy.
It's way different. Like you have like 2 things here. There's like when do we get consumer grade quantum computers, which might be in the future. And then there's another thing is because quantum computers, they look differently, the CPU architecture, and you don't really have zeros and one, 0, 1, 2, I think. Like all the assembly would have to be rewritten, or not rewritten, but re-implemented. And if entire assembly needs to be rewritten, like you can't run x86, or it's a lot of work.
That's exactly what it is. When you're worried about, and everything is asynchronous. All of it is asynchronous because of the quantum nature of how it works, which is why you want it, because you're effectively executing insane amounts of things concurrently. But we're talking. You got to look at your threat model. Who's going to get viable quantum computers connected to the internet first? Nation states, governments, right? Well, you go research facilities, and then it's only takes a few hours for the government to knock on the door and go, hey, we heard you have the singularity here. Sure would be a shame if something happened. And so our nation states, part of your threat model, is your organization worried about China, Russia, et cetera, North Korea attacking you? If you are not a viable target for them to waste this expensive process on, then you don't need to be worrying about that perhaps until after you're dead. Because who are you worried about? Are you worried about the basement hackers? The non-nation state APTs, who may have some funding, but certainly not enough to run a research facility to power. Because you're talking supercomputers again, right? You're talking the next Cray, when the first Cray. You're talking, and so we're waiting until this is a box under my desk. We're waiting until it's a GPU effectively that I can throw code at and then hack, crack all of your. Not a IT historian. I don't know. I have no basis on this, but I don't think it's going to happen until after I'm dead, and I'm only 45. That's based on nothing. That's my own emotional guess. Please don't change the position of your security organization based on that.
Yeah.
But it's just like quantum computing is so far away, and I want it to be here. We've seen so many other things. Look how long we waited for bad AI to be consumer grade. Like, to be fair, like ChatGPT, we have been working on that since probably the 60s. Since people started interfacing with computers and going, wow, the computer does tasks for me. I sure wish it could understand what I was asking it. When I took my first computer programming class in university, the very first thing that the professor wrote on the board was a little poem that says, I really hate this computer. I think I'm going to sell it. It never does what I want it to, only what I tell it. And that's right, because you're not getting the output you expect. It's because you did not tell it to give you that output. And so we've been working on trying to make computers understand what we want from them, and to logically reason out what we were asking of them for a long time. I would venture since we first came up with machines that could calculate. So you want to talk about how soon are we going to get quantum computing. 100 years after we first, made regular computing, maybe. But I don't know. That's just there are people who spend their lives as historians focusing on this who could speak
Yeah.
more about that.
Yeah, definitely. And the Cray computers, for our listeners don't know, it basically looks like a big ugly fridge, like standing next to each other. Yeah, it's
Oh, it does. You can go see a lot of these supercomputers in Washington, D.C. Here, there is the National. Let me remember. The National Cryptological Museum has tons of the U.S. government's cryptological artifacts, and some other countries as well. Anything that's been declassified, of course, including all of these old supercomputers that are long since decommissioned in beautiful condition. They're not running, but they're physically there,
Nice.
and you can stand next to them. You could touch them, and it was just crazy. Like it was a real emotional experience for me to go in and put my hand on that first Cray supercomputer, because I read about this when I was a little kid, and I was way too into computers back then. And we're talking even the 1980s. But to be able to this thing that you hear so much about and would reference, like sci-fi TV shows would talk about the Cray, and it was this magical artifact. It was science fiction as far as anyone could tell. And then they go, it's real, and I'm touching it. It's not even. Oh, they have some of them turned on, which is cool because they blink and all kinds of lights and stuff. And they're not doing anything, but it's neat to see them functioning. So yeah, National Cryptological Museum in Washington, D.C. Very highly recommend. It's a small place. You in and out in maybe an hour. Very cool if you're in our nation's capital. All the museums in Washington, D.C. are just incredible. You can't go wrong. Please, if you happen to be there, see at least 2 museums.
I will take your word. If I ever go to the States, I know a sightseeing place now.
Oh yeah, we don't have a lot of sightseeing places. We have most of the middle of our country is completely uninhabited. So we have a lot of land and not many things, but that is a great place.
Yeah.
back to reality.
So back to
yeah. So another thing that's happened this year is that there's several
AI.
groups that have hit a 40-year-old milestone. We have 2600. We have the CDC, the Cult of the Dead Cow. We have the Chaos Computer Club. All started in 1984, 40 years ago. Still going strong, which is well.
In fact, you know what I have sitting here on my desk? I know we're an audio podcast, but I'll show you guys in the camera. Maybe you can read.
Yes,
I don't know. See on the bottom it says.
Yeah.
We're looking at a watch type of thing with a PCB on it and a little LCD screen.
Yeah, this was the badge from the Chaos Computer Camp in 2019, and it was it has all kind of biometric sensors on it.
That's cool.
So it's like an open source bio watch, and that was also the badge. Yeah, it was very really cool. And I still have it sitting right here on my desk. So big fan of the Chaos Computer Club. Possibly the oldest, hard to say, oldest organization of
I
hacking.
think so. Actually, before the Chaos Computer Club, there was another. Hello, everyone. This is Filip in post-production, and I looked this fact up. And the group I'm referring to is called HackTick, and we'll link them in the show. But it seems like they're not before Chaos Computer Club, unfortunately. That's a side note. All right, back to the episode. Like, I forgot the name. If you're a listener, you can go back and listen to. There's an episode with Misha from the Netherlands. He talks about it, but it's basically was a group that was publishing e-signs before the Chaos Computer Club. And then they started an ISP called XS for All in the Netherlands, which was very well-known pro internet privacy and pro individual rights and stuff like that. And then out of that sparked a lot of scenes and a lot of the European culture. And now we have CCC Camp, which is in the summer, which is if you want to go camping in Europe with a bunch of nerds and have a good time. You should definitely go.
It's so cool. It's so cool. Yeah, it's literally, it's in the woods. You're camping. You don't ever have to leave the woods. You bring a tent, and there's so much good food and people
dance,
from
yeah.
so many countries.
Music
And
blasting
there's
off.
so many discotheques to to dance in. It is absolutely the coolest hacker
I will
conference
definitely
I
do
have
that.
ever gone
It is.
to in my life, and I think about it all the time. And it's basically, it's like Burning Man for hackers, because there's so much art and creativity alongside the education. It's an experience. Everyone should be it's
Definitely.
the Mecca. You should make a pilgrimage to CCC if you're a real hacker. I know it's difficult if you're outside of Europe, but especially if you're in Europe, you're doing yourself a great disservice.
It's an incredible place, and I know so many people that they met up there, and they started companies, and they started like lifelong friendships, and they're also very well known because they have, I don't know the English word, but they have these plastic toilets which they put server racks in, like right in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, say we are nerds without saying
you'll see this like
yes. Yeah, and they have a big antenna out the top as well. Yeah, it's we call them porta potties here.
Yeah,
but yeah, the portable toilets.
See real expensive switches.
You open the door and it's a server rack. The core switches are all in a big telephone booth, and literally it has a big sign on it that just says the internet, and you can look inside and you see all the blinking lights, and it really is the internet, and it's going out there. One of the craziest parts of camp is that they set up a network at camp, and you can join any machine you want to this network and host whatever you want, and the FTP servers there are you will never even catalog the entirety of what's available before camp is over. And it is all kinds of tons of music. It's like the old days of like pre-Napster, like IRC file sharing, so much music. And then lots and lots of nightmare stuff, including exploits that people are just O-days that they've just been sitting on, and then they will just put it out there, and tons of pirated everything. And they do this because by the time Interpol or whoever shows up, the network is long gone. Everything is torn down and gone, and so they're like, hey, we can temporarily host a lot of extremely illegal things. And then by the time the bureaucracy paperwork goes through, everyone's long gone, and it's just a hole in the woods. And I think that's very funny.
Yeah.
2019, T-Mobile set up a dedicated cellular
really
tower
cool.
for it. Were either of you? Or I know you, Zagros wasn't there, but
I was not there. I had my ticket though. And I had a ride there, but I did not make it, unfortunately. I was at the winter one. They have like the summer camp is like every 2 years, I think, or every 3 years, and then they have like a smaller event as well on the summer. But they have a winter event as well in December. I think it just passed once a year. Conference, and I've been to the winter one multiple times. Yeah.
So they set up a dedicated cellular tower, and you could get a SIM card to put in your phone, and it would give you a 4-digit phone number that you could trade with. You could give away to people at camp, and if they were on the camps, and I mean dedicated cellular network where it only served camp. And so you got your own little local 4-digit phone number, and you call people on your camp phone. You just pop it in, and now you're on your camp phone. And there was a great way to like be able to keep in touch without having to give your real phone number away, or to deal with international SIMs and crap like that. And T-Mobile just donated it. It was really, really, really cool. And one of the the internet was they had to set up a microwave tower to get the internet access, and one of the members is a helicopter pilot who does this sort of work. And so he hooked up the microwave dish to the top of, I believe it was a really, really tall smokestack as part of a factory that was out there, and he said, and he flew the helicopter up there, and it was really, really, really cool to watch. And he was just one of the hackers. He's like, "Oh yeah, I do this for work. I fly. I'll get it up there."
Yeah. No problem. Just make it happen.
Yeah, so it's just a crazy
Definitely.
place. Such I want to go back so bad. Next, I missed the last one, and I only went in 2019 because it's every 4 years, right? And
Every 3 or 4
yeah,
years.
and I keep saying, "Oh, I'll have to go next time. I'll have to go next time. I'll have to go next time." And then I'm 40 years old, and I go, "When am I gonna go?" I can't keep saying next time, so I went, and now I did it again last time. I said,
I
"Oh,
hope
I'll go
that
next
the
time."
next time I will
I said,
be there, and
I can't do
I
that.
hope I will see
This
you, Johnny.
this coming
so I'm
one, I have
taking
to
your
go,
word
so I'll
for
be
it.
there. I will see you guys there. Look for Johnny Christmas
Yeah.
in the midst of thousands of people.
All right, fair enough. I will note it.
Yeah, I'll be at the Millerways camp. Look for Millerways. That's my camp. I will be there. Oh yeah, CCC.
It is next year.
It is
right? No, in 2
it's
years.
in 2 years. Yeah.
Or in 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm not,
It will be a big build up as well. There is actually a smaller one. A few hackers that they leave CCC and they want to continue the good vibes. So 1 week after CCC, if you're still in Europe, you can take the train to Denmark, and there is an event called Bornhack, which is like much smaller, but it's the same vibes, and you ran into a lot of the same people. It's just way smaller out in the Danish woods. There is really nice, actually.
that's cool. I love that.
Yeah, and there's one in the
We have one here called Toorcamp as well.
yeah.
TOR or TOOR camp. Yeah, sorry. Toorcamp, which is a big one, and similar. It's fun. It's on an island, which is fun. You go out to an island, and then everybody on the island is a hacker. I won't go too deep into it, but yeah, if you're in the U.S. and you want a similar hacking camp experience, Toorcamp is a real popular one.
When is Toorcamp? Which time of the year?
Let's see. It's when the weather's nice.
Okay.
At least. It's not in the winter, yeah. Let's see. When was it in 2024? I'm looking. It was June. It's usually summerish. This is it was June 26th through 30th of this year. Yeah, so I would assume it will be next June. So you have about 6 or 7 months to plan Toorcamp, and they go all out. It is it is very similar to CCC, a little bit smaller, but equally as cool, for sure. Get out of the basement, go touch some grass,
breathe some fresh air,
but still keep
talk
hacking.
Shit with people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So CCC, CDC, 2600. That's man. I was just a kid finding these things.
You have a long history with 2600. Like, do you think it's changed a lot during the years, or you're like same old?
You know what? I think it has not changed a lot, and that is to their detriment. And to be fair, they are making great efforts to update themselves lately, and I wish them the best, and it's great to see. They did have some struggles, some social struggles, just before the pandemic, or 2016. 2018, I think the 2018 conference, there was a lot of fallout. I'm talking about the Hope conference that 2600 runs every 2 years.
Hackers on planet Earth.
Yeah, there was a lot of fallout over them. So it's the Hope conference and also the 2600 organization there. I often refer to them as they're like a socio-political conference with hacktivist leanings and themes. They're very much all about affecting society for the better, and by any means necessary. And that means means using computers, but not necessarily. Yeah, they're extremely what we would say in the US, extremely leftist organization.
Not only
who is trying to affect change, but they're also like super into hacking, hackerdom. I mean, the HOPE stands for Hackers on Planet Earth, and they're all about exchanging information and the belief that all information should be free, and they're not, and that they're all about the moral use and dissemination of
Yeah.
information, which may not necessarily be equivalent to the legal use and dissemination of information. That's how countries' laws go sometimes. But yeah, they've always been very political. In 2018, they had a lot of problems with the idea that everyone has a right to voice their opinion, which I think a lot of people, if you would say, hey, do you believe that everyone has the right to voice your opinion? I think most people say yes. And then you can start digging down into that and go, well, what if their opinion is some horrible things I won't say on your podcast?
Yeah.
You can, whatever is the most horrible thing you can think someone could do, should they have the right to get a microphone in front of a crowd and tell them why this is a good idea? And then you go, well,
Blah, blah, blah,
some
blah.
people would
Yeah.
say no. Anyway, there was a lot of fallout in 2018 over that. And a lot of groups. There was a group who was trying to stop other people who were on stage voicing their opinion, and nobody stopped that group from doing the stopping, if you understand what I'm saying. And it's like, all right, if you say everybody has the right to voice, their opinion, then you should have some sort of security in place to make sure that doesn't get interrupted. And so, well, it got really bad, and it was handled poorly, and a lot of people stopped attending the conference and said, you know what, this conference really is getting old and stagnant, and the organization is getting old and stagnant. And to be fair, like the people who are on the board, a lot of the people on the board are the founding members of 2600, which is, great. Which is incredible. Like to have, Emmanuel Goldstein is still there at the top saying, hey,
the founder and the starter, like he's still active out there, and
he's still, and Bernie S is up there.
Bernie S, amazing phone freak. Bernie S, and then Kyle came
and
later.
Cheshire is, Cheshire unfortunately has left us, but so they've done great strides recently in bringing in some fresh blood into the board, into the staff, who is asking questions, who is actively making changes. And I honestly helped out with the conference they did during the pandemic, which was virtual, and I'm not a fan of virtual anything. I don't like virtual conferences. It's not for me. But having been such a long time participant of 2600 and all that, I said, oh, well, I'm going to go. I'll help out with this anyway. And it was the best virtual conference I had ever seen. It was so well run and so easy to see all of the talks, follow the tracks, communicate. The chat was fantastic and active. It was a great time. So they've moved venues they're out in Queens now, which is a bit far away from where all of the action is in New York City, which made it a bit unappealing to me. And I said, I'm not going to go all the way down into Queens where there's nothing else to do, because a big part of what I liked about going to Hope was you walk outside the door and you're in the middle of Manhattan. You're in the middle of the most stuff to do in America.
Yeah.
And
it's going on 24/7. It's
24/7, absolutely.
New York vibes,
Yeah, and now it's a lot of that's changed. It's on a dry campus, meaning you can't bring alcohol onto the campus, which some people celebrate, some people are against. The feedback I have been hearing about the new venue and the new conference is it's very positive.
Yeah.
And so I think I might go back and take a peek. I've been letting my friends go and saying, you let me know how it is. It seems like a hassle.
Yeah, I've talked to.
They've been having a good time.
I've talked to. There's even an episode like before the last conference, which was like a year ago or the last Hope. It was 2022, right? 1 year ago. 2 years ago.
That would mean that there was another one this year, and I mean, if you want evidence of how much I dropped out of tracking it, going from I used to not shut up about how it was my favorite conference, and I mean, really, the pandemic changed how we perceive what's important and and who we are and what we want to do. But looks like it was 2 years ago. It was in 23. So the next one. Oh wait, no, was it this year?
It was the year before, right? Because I did there's a podcast interview.
Gosh. It was this year. I'm looking right at it. It was July 12th through 14th of 2024. Oh yeah, because they have had two at the new facility, and this was the second one this year. And then they announced afterwards, or no, they only announced recently that they're going to be doing the conference every year.
Every year,
now.
so not every 2 years, like it
every year. Correct. So it'll be every year. The next one is August 15th through 17th of 2025. So it's about a month later. That puts it a little too close to Defcon for some people's comfort, I think. But that was always a problem with Hope, was you really had to make a choice of, are you going to go to Hope or are you going to go to Defcon? Because just really the cost involved, traveling this way and that way. And they were often they were often 1 week apart, sometimes 2 weeks apart. And that's not long enough for people to justify that kind of expenditure. And so often people who went to Hope didn't go to Defcon. And so the two groups never really mingled, which was a shame because they're two very, very different groups. The Hope folks, again, more like the socio-political hacktivist, information sharing folks. Side. Yeah. And then Defcon is more
corporate.
Oh, it's extremely corporate now. Yeah, absolutely. We can. I don't think we got the time to talk about how Defcon has changed. I don't think we have to. Everyone's aware. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone is really aware of it as well. And speaking of old groups, Cult of the Dead Cow has recently started a new project, and I was chatting with Dildog and Medus4 and some other members. They started a new project called Waylid, which is aiming to make a lot of privacy enhancement and basically do private routing and be like a better alternative to Tor almost, where the idea is that you have end-to-end applications that talk to each other in a private way. It's really interesting project.
The first massive release from CDC in a long time. And so that's cool to see. I mean, let me derail the conversation again and go back to Defcon. But the first, when I found out about Defcon, because this is just a fun, dumb story. I was a teenager and I was on the BBS, a local Chicago hacking BBS, and some of the guys were going to go to a amusement park nearby and say, "Hey, we should all meet. We should meet up in real life," which is a crazy idea at the time. And I had to talk to my mother and ask my mother to give me a ride to this amusement park to go meet these people from the computer. Well, it was pre-internet, right? It's the BBS. You can't. It's not the internet. Like these people from the computer. Like I don't know how to even explain this. And who are these people? I don't really know them, but we're all going to meet. Why? Well, because we all like computers, and we're going to meet and we're going to talk about computer. You can't explain anything when you're 16, 17 years old. And so I go, and one of them had a laptop, which was crazy at the time, like a notebook computer. To have such a thing at the time was an extreme expense. And it could play videos, which was also crazy for the time. And he had like a camcorder recording. I think this is on YouTube now, but he had a video of the CDC releasing Back Orifice at Defcon.
Oh yeah.
And it was crazy. And he was explaining to me like, yeah, these hackers, they get together and they go in Las Vegas and they just release these O-days and they hack everything. I'm like, that's absolute insanity. How can that even happen? Yeah. So I know CDC from way back then, watching a video on a laptop, which now is a dumb sentence, but back then it was crazy. Yeah. And to have friends, not like to still like, I talk to Dildog with some regularity on the social media, Medusa, with some regularity. In fact, if you go look through her tweets from the last Defcon, I gave her a whole bunch of teeth. And I was like, "Hey, do you want some teeth? I got extra teeth." And then she goes, "I have just the place for this." And she pulls a little zipper bag out of her backpack, and it's a zipper bag that says on it, "Definitely not teeth." And I was like, "Why do you have this bag?" And she goes, "Why do you have teeth?" And we were dying. We were cracking up. So there's a great picture of her and I with a bunch of teeth and and so yeah. So anyway, it's cool to like see them. She's a newer member of CDC, newish, but it's cool to know these people and to see this organization still going on, and that it's still actively trying to do things to help the greater good, not just saying, "Hey, we're a group of people who exist." But Valid, I think I'm wrong. I always thought it was pronounced Veil ID, as in to like in English, a veil is to like something you hide behind, and
Like
then ID, yeah. And maybe that was their intention, but then you put it all together and you call it Valid. Maybe I'm just guessing correctly. I don't know, but it is really cool. I know they are pushing hard for adoption, and that's the trick. If you want to, I mean, this folds into the greater Web 3.0 conversation of decentralized communication and privacy focused everything. And we're just not seeing the passion for the adoption of these new things.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because and I say we as a civilization, are we just over, are we just, is there too much now? And we just don't have any ability left to care anymore. And we're just giving up. And this is how it ends. I mean, especially for the average person, it's going to be really hard to get like corporate adoption for something that makes it so you can't gather anything that you can make money off of. Because like how do all these free services make money now? It's the collection and the selling of.
Yeah, they have to monetize it some way or another, and that's either at the cost of the users or ads or sell data,
right.
or
and it's because there are costs involved in operating whatever you're operating. If you want to talk about like, hey, like so Valid, one of the things that the platform can be used for that they push is that it could be used for to create a decentralized social media where nobody's data is collected and everybody's private. Sounds great, but like there's a cost to hosting this, right? Even who's trying this right? Blue Sky is trying this right now. Blue Sky is a decentralized,
they are,
and they're
Twitter alternative,
right, and they're trying. They have costs. We still have to run this on computers, right? And if you leave it up to the individual, if you want to say like, oh, well, it's up to the individuals, and as long as there's enough people on the decentralized network running computers, then the network will always exist. And we see how that failed with torrents. Right? The second there's not enough people seeding, it ceases to exist.
Exactly.
And then getting that seeding back is often borders on impossible. You got to start making telephone calls. Like, hey, man, do you still have that file? Can you? Yeah. So there's always that. Even cryptocurrency. There are fees, gas, whatever your blockchain wants to call it. Yeah.
Transaction costs.
Because electricity. So until, and I do have a few friends who are running some cryptocurrency setups off of solar electricity and batteries, but even that has the costs. That's not free. I can't go outside and find a solar panel, right? So I think that's always going to be the problem, is until we can eliminate money. There's this paywall to running all of this, and until we figure out how to make, and maybe we will. Quantum computing can do that. When we're talking about how powerful quantum computing will be, well, one quantum computer, if that's going to replace 1 trillion desktop computers, maybe that, we're getting close to eliminating the cost of what these things are. But I wanted to exist. I love the idea of decentralized, private, everything, but and we should think about these things, and we should push for these things, and we should create the proto versions of these things like we're doing now. Somebody has to do this, just like somebody was making chat bots in the early 1990s on AOL to kind of force the production of the AI that we're getting closer to today. We should absolutely be talking about decentralized communication networks. Because one day they will be close to free to operate. Like storage is practically free now, right? We finally got here where, and so now, hopefully, compute is becoming close to free, and it is close to free in small quantities. with various tiers of service and AWS and GCP and things like that. But I just think that Web3, we've been pushing Web3 since the 2010s.
Yeah.
Until compute is free,
Mm.
I just think it's not going to get massive adoption. And until we get rid of the criminals, the scammers, it's so...
Yeah, but you have that in a lot of new fields. It's like when the internet became big, like so many people were saying as well, like it's only going to be used for pornography and
and now, I mean, to be fair, pornography is still a third of the internet, so it's pornography keeps the lights on.
Still going on.
Yeah.
It depends on how you say the sentence, because some people it will only be used for pornography, and then other people goes, it'll only be used for pornography. Yay! And I mean, and you're right, like all new technologies, like anything that happens, the first thing that comes out is somebody figuring out, how can I make money easy off this? How can I scam these people? But like,
yeah, especially when it's like a really young landscape as well, like, and it's not regulated.
Which is what we're talking about with Web3, is literally we're trying to recreate the Wild West that we were promised the internet would be. You know, it's just anyone can do anything and it's self-regulated. But I cannot believe it's almost 2025 and we still have people like
lot of scams.
The Huck Tua girl doing fake cryptocurrency scams. And I can't believe that NFTs are like that. People are still believing that this NFT crap can work in the form that the scams are working in. NFTs absolutely have a place. It's just there's so many scams that like I can't believe this is still happening. It's just nuts to me.
Yeah, there seems to be
it's increasing
volume as well. Like the Hog Tua things, like you have the insider traders, but you also have like the coin was hosted on a Liquidity or a DEX, decentralized exchange for Radium. And the owner of the issuer of the contract, he printed like 1.5 million in fees. And that is just transaction fees from other people using it. So that's not like the insider traders or the people that just bought a shitload or got a shitload and then just dumped it.
Right. It was like everything that it was such a textbook scam from top to bottom. And I'm not saying that like it was one person who set this up to be a scam. Just like everything that we know that you should look out for when you're trying to develop a new cryptocurrency, right down to like, you should not be developing a new cryptocurrency. But everything that we know goes wrong with these things went wrong instantly. And it's like, how? Yes. Other than like the only thing I can believe like is this was planned out. This was all intentional. That's the only way in 2025 that they can.
Yeah, it looks a bit like that, especially in this case, or like from my point of view, at least, it looks like someone that really knows what they're doing, how to issue these types of things, and they find someone that has a lot of social capital, like this girl, and then they just use her to promote their own, basically to pump and dump, just like stock promotion used to work.
Yeah, and she got scammed. She got scammed perhaps the most. She may get scammed into perhaps prison time. We'll see. I don't think prison, but like mega fucked. Just
poor girl. Yeah,
and that's what they do. Like they find these. It's what and they say like, look, all these other celebrities have their own vodka, right, or tequila,
perfume,
or something.
You're
right. And look how good they do. We're gonna make you We're gonna make you NFTs because that's the new hotness. Like nobody's buying vodka anymore. It's the NFTs. And you go, okay, I don't know anything about any of this. I've been a celebrity for 12 days. Yeah. Sounds good. Especially with someone like her, where she knows her time is limited. You got 15 minutes and you have to figure out how can I make money out of this 15 minutes right now? Or how can I extend the 15 minutes, which is much more difficult. I don't know how her podcast became a thing because she instantaneously started having these mega celebrities like Mark Cuban was just on her podcast.
And her I guess she has like a branding team and some kind of manager behind her, and like just going from like just
Yeah.
an internet meme. Like you have your 20 minutes of fame to like having Mark Cuban and I don't
Yeah.
know. I read somewhere it's
Yeah.
like the third most popular podcast in the US right now, which is like
Yeah, it absolutely is.
from
Which
nothing
at
to
least tells you, yeah. Well, so that's those numbers are hard to believe because it's dirty
Mhm.
data, and it's not. This is not her fault. What those numbers are based off of is downloads. They're not based
Okay.
on listens. And so what I think happened is because I've listened to this podcast and it's not
Hi. Okay.
amazing. Um, it's fine. It's better than I would have expected, I will say, but I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Um, there's no hard hitting questions being asked on this podcast. But I think what happened is like, oh, the Hawk Tua girl, she's got a podcast. Oh, I should listen to it. And then you hit subscribe. Then every single episode that comes out, your phone downloads.
Oh, it just goes on auto repeat.
Those episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps downloading until you go in and manually unsubscribe. And especially when there's no cost to subscribing, you never get around to unsubscribing. That's like work. And so she's getting, billions of downloads, but how many people are actually listening to every episode? And I think that's very few. And that's data that isn't released, like Apple Podcasts. As someone who used to run a podcast, like that data is not something that's given to you. You can't see listen time on most platforms. I think I recall we had one that could, but so it's hard to tell, but it is the third most downloaded podcast for sure. But then she had, like you said, a huge marketing team come in, and she made the right decisions and went with the right marketing and branding teams and really figured this out, which is astounding. And again, I'm trying my best to not be disparaging towards her. It's astounding because there are so many of these firms that are scams. There are firms that are lecherous, that they're leeches, and they look for these 15-minute celebrities and they swoop in and they go, hey, we're going to make you a billionaire. All you got to do is sign on these lines and let us use your celebrity to promote these things. And those things sometimes end up being these NFT scams, these cryptocurrency scams. But then sometimes they hook her up in the right way and give her a podcast that really worked out, that is extending, her celebrity and making her some money. And then also she ended up suing the organization that made her famous for the whole Hawk Tua thing. Got a few bucks out of that, which, good. Is that what you want to be known for the rest of your life? Absolutely not. Do you want to be able to do, like, how are you going to go for a job hunt and they're like, oh yeah, you're that Hawk Tua girl. So, but also she screamed it into a microphone. I don't know. But yeah, like, it's just these scams and scams and scams. And like, it's just like, anytime I think of Web3, it's just, that's predominantly what it is. And it's really unfortunate because it's what we've done. It's kind of an extension of really what we did with the internet. Like, back in the 90s, we thought the internet was going to be it was going to usher in utopia. We were going to finally live in a perfect world because we thought that what was causing all of the problems globally was that people did not have access to information, to factual information. And we said, once everyone has the internet, well, then everyone's going to have the facts and everyone will know everything. Also, everyone will have all knowledge. And then we will start building, quantum computers and cold fusion generators. And we'll live on the sun. I don't know.
Will be
and so the reality of what happened. Yeah. Well, and the reality of what happened was we allowed these people who had bad facts to find other people who also believed the same bad facts, and then to go, see, I was right. All of these people say I'm right too. And it's the other people who are wrong. And then now, instead of you being the crazy person in the village, you've connected every village's crazy person together. And now you have 10 million of these crazy people in every country, enough to shift the votes, and to sway democracy. using democracy against itself to in some countries, and the U.S. is struggling with this, to implement fascism by way of democracy. And we've just the internet was, one could argue, is the worst thing that has happened to civilization. And now with Web3, with all of the great things that it could be, it's so unfortunate that the vast majority of it is still just garbage and criminal activity. That's my Web3 rant. Thank you, everyone, for coming to my podcast.
I can totally agree with that, Johnny. There was, for example, one thing that I think is actually great towards the scams and the frauds on the Web3 is the use of chain analysis, which is a great tool. I think a lot of law enforcement entities are using it to track down the fraudsters or the threat actors. And what is your opinion on that, Johnny? Using the chain analysis.
When so long as it works, if you're a scammer, you're a fraudster, like, you're effectively stealing money from people. Now we can get into who did you steal the money from, and is it a victimless crime, and did you steal the money from JC Morgan Chase, or did you steal the money from my grandmother? I'm all about catching these people who are stealing from, the underserved, the people who need it. When you are changing lives by stealing things from people, from good people, you should absolutely be caught and stopped, 100%. The chain analyzers, there's a lot of good stuff out there. I talk to the Secret Service a lot, who is in the U.S. A lot of people don't realize this. The Secret Service is also in charge of investigating financial crimes. They don't just protect the president. I think most folks think that that's what the Secret Service does, but they have a lot of other duties. They investigate financial crimes, and they have quite a lot of interesting tools at their disposal. And especially, it's not just chain analyzers, because you have to tie, in the end, you have to tie the cryptocurrency back to fiat currency somewhere. In a lot of cases where you're trying to do. Now, that's not necessarily true. There's absolutely been plenty of cases where the FBI and Secret Service, et cetera, have busted people just for stealing cryptocurrency and then took possession of that cryptocurrency.
Which is kind of weird, as we see a lot of we have a lot of cases where the government has actually stolen cryptocurrency and then use it for covert operation or to set people up.
That's a problem, isn't it?
It is a lot of sides to it as well.
When you're right. It's the government stealing.
It's a big problem.
I don't know how deep we wanted to get into that.
But we should also fiat currency is a conversation within its own, and the central banks and all of that. It's we could spend hours on that. But I think it's great that we have private money, such as Monero, especially when you have I know I have a lot of friends that they have relatives in the Middle East, and they have relatives in third world countries where they have not so great governments, and the only way they can send money to them, to their parents, their grandparents, are using cryptocurrency and using Monero, and using Bitcoin.
We still have that last, what we call that last mile problem, of they have to still convert that to a fiat currency, some kind of viable currency in the location they're in. And so hopefully they're able to do that at least. But it is funny with all sorts of things like this. We always forget those underserved folks, those at-risk people who are really benefiting from this. When we always like to say, oh, it's only used by criminals, and so criminals can steal things and get away with it. And anybody who the larger accusation is anybody who demands privacy is up to something bad, right? That's what we always get accused of. And the reality is okay, well, anybody who says that has clearly never been in and has led such a privileged life that they've never been in a situation, and they have never known anyone else to have been in a situation where a lack of privacy put that person in immediate danger, and often life-threatening danger. Forget the Middle East, right? right in your own neighborhood, there's no lack of spousal abuse and battered women and just negative relationships where people are trying to hide from another individual. And there's in the US we have a huge problem with police officers also having extremely high rates of spousal abuse, and we have this problem with the police officers abusing their ability to bypass privacy restrictions in order to stalk these people they're abusing. It's insanity. It's
awful.
It's beyond comprehension. If you would like take an alien race and explain to them like what police officers do, at no point would they conclude that this would be the result. And so there's plenty of people who require privacy to, in some cases, be alive. And the fact that
we've seen that.
Yeah, the fact that we're trying to destroy that, to say like, no, well, too bad. You can just die because we need other people to live. Because they say like, oh, well, we need, going all the way back to what I was mentioning about when I was talking about the TSA keys. And the conversation was that there was a shooting at a military base and they couldn't decrypt they couldn't get into the shooter's phone. And they said, hey, we need Apple to make us a backdoor for this phone. For all phones, so that when this happens, we can get into the communications. And you remember that. And that's to say that, oh, well, those people, it was so we could have stopped that and made those few people live in exchange for how many people are going to be abused and killed, because then that backdoor gets leaked. And there's no end of evidence that privacy absolutely saves more than it hurts. And we need to push that at every opportunity.
Yeah, I can totally agree.
Absolutely. Like a case from this year is a guy named Pavel Durov, which is ironically born in 1984. So it's not only the 2600 is born there, but Pavel Durov, Russian entrepreneur, started VK.com and some other bigger social media companies that was later stolen by the government pretty much. And he left the country and he started 2013. He started Telegram, which is really huge in Europe. And they have like 1 billion users. And it's the biggest instant message. It's the biggest Cyrillic, so Russian speaking, Azerbaijan speaking instant messaging platform in the world. And basically, it's huge. And basically this year, Pavel Durov has been very pro-privacy, like for a lot of years, and his brother also done great stuff. But this year they had some problems because too many people were using Telegram for basically selling weed in Europe, and that's very bad.
Yeah.
And the government are like, oh, give us the data, but they couldn't. So when Pavel was in Paris this year, they snatched him up, the government, and basically forced him to make Telegram implement the backdoor, which has led to, I can probably count like 45 arrests that happened the last 3 months in Europe.
The upside is it made huge news. And so I think a lot of people are aware to no longer use Telegram. There's around my city, I even see, the stickers put all over the place that just say Telegram is not private, Telegram is not secure, and people I don't know are just putting stickers up, and I'm like, good, I love seeing this. Get the word out, because everybody is used to using Telegram for those sorts of things, for being able to deal in things that the government wants to call a crime because they don't know how to make money off it, and it is unfortunate because, again, like Telegram also has been used for a lot of people who like need privacy for other reasons. It's the number one app out there. It's when I go on to like Airbnb, they ask you for a Telegram phone number so that your hosts can communicate with you. And not that demands privacy, but it's like that ingrained into people's day-to-day usage, that it's really, 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 really sad to see that happened and that was forced to happen. And where can people go now?
There's a lot of new platforms that have been popping up. Some people say you switch to Telegram. There is like another another startup called Simple X. If you want to use a private server, you can email podcast@pirate.com.
But it's your
They'll give you
instance
access.
that you have access
But
to. Who has the servers? That's always the question, right?
I don't have root
All right.
access. I want to say that.
Yeah. In the U.S.,
but
Signal is
Simple
very
X,
popular in the U.S.
Signal.
Created by
saw-
another very famous old hacking individual. Yeah, if you want to talk about
Moxie.
people
Yeah.
from back in the day, Moxie created Signal, and so if you,
But Moxie has stepped down now, right?
yeah,
like 2 years ago maybe. Moxie also he's behind some
even
key exchange.
iOS,
encryption.
Apple iOS messages now have end-to-end encryption where you can control the key and you can do user verification. So you do basically a key exchange, and so then if that key ever changes, then you're alerted and told like, hey, the key has changed. The person may not be who you think you are talking to. Do something to verify. And so that's really cool for Apple to have implemented that. It's been end-to-end encrypted for a very long time. Apple is just like, it's funny because Apple became the like most private operating system for phones out of a feud that they were having with Facebook.
Okay, everything's working. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, we should. So, guys, do you have any New Year's resolutions or anything you want to or looking forward to in 2025?
For me, I would say enhancing more professionally in in professional penetration testing, as it that is what I would say is my goal. I mean, becoming the best, and that's becoming the best of myself. And normally, if I'm gonna be honest, at this time, I have not thought so far. The only thing I'm thinking of is at least continue learning the basic answer.
For me, I'm building out my organization's first internal red team and internal penetration testing service, and I am really looking forward to going cutting edge with it. Not trying to not throwing out the old tried and true methodologies, but absolutely I'm doing a hard focus on what is up and coming, what the future looks like, who's doing interesting things in this space. Because if I'm building something new, I don't want it to look like something old. I want it to, be something that's going to grow instead of getting thrown out. And if it means starting with something that's maybe not quite ready, I think that could be cool to work with. I'm really interested in helping new players in this space get a foothold. Really building something that's going to end up being something I can brag about in 2 to 3 years. And so that's where I'm spending a lot of my time professionally. And then personally, I just spent a long time in the hospital, most of November, with pneumonia, and I need to get my physical health back. And so I'm looking forward to making great strides already. I hit another milestone yesterday where I can hit 140 beats per minute with my heart and not die.
Good.
And and so I'm excited to get back to where I was, which will be, they said it's a long road, but I'm focusing hard on that. And that's my plans.
It is really strong of you, and it's a great achievement that you're keeping.
Well,
that you're working on your
let me
health
tell
to
you how
keep.
motivating
I mean, to getting past
almost
the
dying is.
consequences of I'm having a hard time saying it.
Yeah, you guys almost had yet another podcast host that died on you.
I can
Or a
imagine it's
podcast guest.
life-altering, most likely, right?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen, and we can be back next year with the next episode, the next New Year special.
And feel free to have me on sooner. Don't wait 4 years.
No, definitely. we will schedule something. Yes, this year's been been pretty busy for everyone. I think.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a wrap for this year. I would like to thank you for listening to this episode of Hacker Talk, and I would like to thank both Johnny and Zagros for participating in this episode. Without you guys, it probably would not have happened. From all of us, we wish you a happy new year, and here is Bone